Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and in today's video we're going to be taking a deep dive into everything that we know about base building in Star Citizen. As a self-confessed survival game junkie, crafting and base building is truly one of the aspects of SC that excites me the most. Whether you're looking to build your perfect isolated cabin in the woods or a metropolis or space station with your organisation, I think it represents the ultimate endgame goal for Star Citizen 1.0. I made a similarly titled video a couple of years ago, but between now and then we've had two Citizen Cons that have featured the topic extensively, and introduced a raft of new information. So I've been wanting to put this together to give a far more detailed overview of CIG's current intentions around this absolutely crucial aspect of the game. So if this sounds good to you, grab a cup of tea while I roll the intro, then let's get into it. In Star Citizen, like in many survival building games, the disciplines of crafting and base building are intrinsically linked. In many ways, building is just a type of crafting. Therefore, this is likely to be a somewhat lengthy deep dive, since it makes sense to look at both under the same umbrella. Since I did, while scripting, get to a point where the word count was rivaling my university dissertation, I have decided to split this into two chapters, with a second video coming shortly focusing exclusively on player-owned space stations. If you do want to jump to a certain topic, I've done my best to break it down into chapters, so you can always use these to skip ahead to a particular point if you want to. I do want to issue a key disclaimer from the start. Crafting and base building has been tabled by CIG for a long time now, with the first clear discussions I can find dating back to 2015 in the Persistent Universe Game Ideas Forum. And while we now have a far firmer idea of CIG's intentions, these are systems that are not in game yet, and so they're subject to change. A key case in point is the recent meltdown over John Crew saying the Galaxy would build bases, then saying it wouldn't, then saying it would again because, pitchforks. Please do keep in mind that during the vid we'll cover some pretty exciting stuff and of course some particularly appealing ships, but they come with some eye-watering real dollar price tags for JPEGs that don't exist in game yet, and where we haven't seen the real functionality at all. Everything and every ship will be available for players to earn in game. So if this video gets you excited enough about Star Citizen's future to get involved and try it now, my advice would be to only part with enough for a starter ship and see how that takes you. Just be sure to use a referral code when you create an account for some additional starter cash. Mine's the one up on screen, but if you've got any mates who play already, please just ask them for theirs. Sometimes with videos like this, there's so much information it can be tricky to pinpoint exactly where to begin. But I think the logical place is with a rundown of the crafting system envisaged by CIG. Whether or not you personally have a great interest in crafting items, this is going to be one of the most important systems in the game, as it evolves into a fully fledged MMORPG. At the highest tier, player crafted items are going to be superior to anything that you can buy from NPC run shops, and the industry that surrounds their manufacture is going to impact the game from a number of angles. If you're a miner, you'll be selling your materials so they can be sunk into recipes, and you'll probably want to trade up to a higher tier crafted mining laser. If you're a combat player, your bread and butter contract list will undoubtedly include protecting resource gatherers as they work on high value deposits, and you're going to want upgraded guns and components that give you the edge in battle. And if you're an explorer, then high quality resources and blueprints are going to be amongst the most valuable discoveries that you can make. Crafting itself is going to be a profession which some players are likely to dedicate themselves to almost exclusively. I can imagine that even in a game called Star Citizen, there will be some folks who rarely venture out of atmosphere and instead are happy buying in materials and supplies to keep their factories in operation. Of course, even if you build yourself a mega factory, it's not going to be any use unless you know what you're crafting. So to kick things off, we're going to look at blueprints. Blueprints are essentially crafting recipes, and they're the foundation for any form of crafting. Even if you've got all the right mats, you won't be able to make anything if you don't have the BP. Blueprints themselves can be acquired in a variety of ways. such as buying them, looting them, or earning them through missions or reputation unlocks. Just like Erica from Stranger Things, I strongly believe in a just the facts approach. And what I always want to be careful of when doing these deep dives is to clearly distinguish between dev talk, community speculation, and to highlight areas where the communication maybe wasn't 100% clear. In his presentation, Thorsten stated about blueprints that while you may find them on a datapad or other portable device, the blueprint itself is not a physical item, you can't collect them in a box or stack them on a bookshelf. Blueprints are digital. Once you claim one, it's permanently added to your personal library. So this caused a bit of a debate when I was at SitCon about whether BPs will be tradable between players. And having rewatched while making this deep dive, my interpretation is that they will be transferable as the item that they come on, the datapad etc., can be passed between players. But that item is effectively single use. You use it, you learn the BP, and then that's yours forever and can't be stolen from you. But the datapad then effectively becomes inert and worthless. In other games I've played, like Ark Survival, there are some recipes that you learn through the skill tree that are always yours, but other more advanced ones are found as blueprints. You then need to add that physical blueprint item to the crafting bench along with the resources. You need to store all those BPs in bookshelves or vaults, and if your base gets raided, these can just be nicked off you by your enemies. So the upside here in Star Citizen is that any recipes you've learned will always be yours regardless of what happens, and you won't be limited by physical location. In effect, you'll be able to hop on over to your base in Pyro and not worry about whether you brought the blueprint with you from Stanton to set a certain item crafting. You also don't need to come up with any convoluted storage systems to keep track of your good blueprints. The downside is that blueprints are a bit more limited as an org resource. Going back to Ark, when our tribe found a really good shotgun or armor blueprint, that was available to everyone in the tribe at any point. We weren't reliant on one person being online when we needed something. Anyone could go to the bookshelf, get out the good BPs. And this is particularly good if your main crafter is just away on holiday or if they decided to leave the game. Conversely, in SC, organisations are going to have to think carefully about which members they select to learn their highest value blueprints. Blueprints can also be upgraded through research, using a research databank. The process will require you to fulfill a number of actions, so in the example we saw at SitCon of a Volt Pulse pistol, to upgrade you needed to craft 1000 units, and you also needed to craft at least one unit with a fire rate of over 1.1k. You could then optionally complete an additional challenge to kill 5 players with a Volt pistol in Pyro to gain an added buff of reduced research time. Obviously these are just filler numbers, so I wouldn't read too much into them. But I do love that the research process is going to spawn a lot of these missions that players will be setting out to do when these systems hit the game. And it isn't just a little mini game where you sit down in the comfort of your own hab. Research is likely to be very time intensive, and players will be limited by how many projects they can pursue at once. So it's going to be an advantage for orgs who may be able to divide and conquer, with some members focusing on upgraded personal weapons while others focus ship components, etc. And for solo players, it's a good reason to encourage interaction and trade with other people. Successful research will give you a second, upgraded version of the same blueprint, allowing you to create more advanced items using more advanced materials. It's definitely worth noting here that you'll still have access to the original lower quality version as well. So if you want to create cheap and cheerful in bulk, you still can. Items are graded in tiers, with tier 1 being a basic version, going up to tier 3 for an advanced option, with multiple stat buffs. Player crafted ships can go all the way up to tier 5. Again, just a side note, since many will already own the ship that they want and not intend to craft a new one, upgrade blueprints can be used to bring an existing ship or item up to the higher tier without having to start from scratch. And this will also likely save you a bunch of time and resources. Speaking of resources, it's time to start thinking about materials. And as is the case in the real world, not all commodities are made equal. When the crafting system drops, CIG intend to add material quality to all gatherable resources, minables, plants and animal products. Higher quality will obviously be more desirable, but high quality mats will be much rarer. Thorsten briefly touched on radars being important for identifying mats, so chances are that as we see scanning mechanics advance, we'll see far more differentiation in terms of the data that different radars return from range. This quality will be carried forwards through any refining processes the material is subjected to, and it will likely influence what you want to use it for. The quality of your mats will influence item stats, allowing you to influence factors like damage, armor, durability, fire rate, and weight. But does this mean that low quality materials are worthless? And are we going to end up in a situation where miners and other resource gatherers spend most of their time passing over mats because they're inferior? In short, no. Lower quality mats still have a good use case. The ultra simple example used was in a refining craft, where we're looking to just make some steel. The primary ingredient is iron ore, and it's the quality of this that will impact the quality of the steel that we produce. The secondary ingredient is carbon. The carbon quality doesn't have any impact on the steel quality. We just need to have a certain quantity of carbon in the recipe. The only impact that the carbon's quality has is on how much of the carbon will be consumed in the process. The higher quality, the less you need, and vice versa. So chances are that players and orgs will split the wheat from the chaff. The highest quality mats will be set aside to be the primary in any refining processes, while the mats below a certain quality threshold will go into fulfilling the secondary slot. Assuming you've got your BPs and your materials, it will be time to actually craft or fabricate your items. There will be a variety of crafting machines differing by size and purpose. You'll be able to find communal ones, such as station refineries, and also to have personal ownership over them, placing them inside your own vehicles, hangars, and bases. Much like other crafted items, the fabricators themselves will also have tiers. So not only can you improve the quality of your items like weapons and mining lasers, you can also improve your setup for making the stuff over time. I know that to some people this is going to sound overly complex, but if you've ever got the bug for other games with crafting systems, it is this kind of complexity and constant evolution that can really grip you, and constantly generate gameplay as you hit a new bottleneck and work out how to deal with it. So what if your goal when it comes to crafting isn't merely to have cooler stuff than your mates, and instead you want to become a verifiable titan of industry? Well, the plan is for you to be able to set up proper shops in the verse and sell your goods to other players. All crafted items, up to and including player crafted ships, will be able to be offered for sale with full ownership transfer. Now, I've personally done a few shady arms deals in the game, and while it is a lot of fun, there's definitely an element of, if I send this guy money, is he then going to shoot me in the face and laugh? Within player bases, you'll be able to set up terminals connected to your local freight elevators, listing items for sale, allowing other players to browse the items you have and make purchases like they do now from NPC-run stores. These items will be then theirs to collect from the freight elevator. You'll also be able to set up more interactive shops by maglocking items in place. Potential buyers can then browse and purchase the items, which will remove the maglock so they can take their newly bought items away with them. Items can be advertised for sale via a mobiGlas app, but the point of purchase and sale will always be the base itself. Dating all the way back to the early town halls in around 2015, Chris Roberts was always really keen to encourage actual travel and exploration in Star Citizen. So rather than staring at a standard auction house that you might see in a lot of MMOs, mouse finger at the ready for someone to list the item that you wanted, he wanted you to have to physically get out there and find the person selling the best QT drive or salvage laser to upgrade your ship with. This also opens up a whole new world of wheeling and dealing for all the would-be Del Boys of the verse, creating a meaningful loop for travelling salespeople to scour the systems for the best crafted items, then bring them to one convenient place where they might be able to turn a profit reselling them to those who don't want to venture so far. So now that we've got a good foundation in crafting, it's time to move on to the base building section. Essentially, much of the base building process will be rooted in the wider crafting elements of the game, with blueprints for different structure types and quality of materials and items impacting what you ultimately come out with. But before you worry too much about what to build, it will help to know where to build. And to start with, it's worth considering the differences between UEE and non-UEE space. Star Citizen 1.0 is tabled to launch with 5 star systems. 3 of these, Stanton, Castra and Terra, will be within the United Empire of Earth's territory, while the other 2, Pyro and Nyx, are outlaw space with no officially recognised government. Building in these 2 overarching areas carries different positives and negatives. Within UEE space, you are a lot safer, as planetary shielding technology means that your buildings will effectively be invulnerable to attack. As anyone who has played a survival game knows, there's a certain knot that forms in your stomach when you wake up and log in to find daylight streaming in through a neat hole in your base, and all your stuff gone. Or worse, when you wake up to find yourself dead, and after a trek back to what was your home, you find nothing but a few bits of rubble and discarded loot marking the spot. Also, since the land is legally yours, you can expect some form of response from the authorities, with NPCs coming in to back you up should anyone start committing crimes of any kind on your property. Of course, none of this comes free. In the process of claiming a plot of land to build on in UEE space, you'll incur costs, and then you'll need to pay ongoing taxes to maintain your claim over the territory. Miss tax payments, and one would assume, lose the rights to the land and anything built on it. The exact nature of taxes wasn't delved into too deeply. One thing that was noted was that taxes would scale the more land that you owned in a particular area, and the more developed it got, so we definitely saw some snapshots where it included a tax amount per building. This is probably a good break on large organisations who'd otherwise probably snap up a small moon or 2. Interestingly, CIG increasingly seemed to be moving away from the land claim beacon system that was explained by the team before. No mention of it at this year's SitCon, and the decision to remove the beacon that typically came bundled with the consolidated Outland Pioneer. In some of the explanations of the mechanics that we saw, it was also just a point of sale where you just bought the plot of land as you went. Under the past outline, a beacon would be required to claim a plot, either 4 km square or 8 km square, and you'd then need to travel to a land registry to verify your claim over that spot. To be 100% honest, I would be very happy if this idea was ditched. It kinda seems like introducing unnecessary clunkiness to the process. When I find the perfect plot of land, I want to start bringing in my materials and laying down my structures. I don't want to delay while I run back to town to sign the forms. What this would mean for the land claims that have been sold to date, I don't honestly know. If I was CIG, I'd just refund those who'd bought them in the brief period where they were on sale, and not let that get in the way of making a better game system. Just a slight tangent, but a worthwhile one I think. Please let this be a cautionary tale regarding the grey market. CIG only sold land claim beacons individually for a very brief window before clearly realising it was a bad idea. And if memory serves, they were about $100 each at the time. On grey market sites like Starhanger, I have seen these things going for 10 times that amount. If CIG did decide to U-turn on the beacons, they wouldn't owe anyone who bought one on the grey market a penny. Right, back on track. So outside of UEE space, in Pyro and Nyx upon launch, you're offered no security, since the long arm of UEE lore doesn't reach that far. Everything you build is going to be vulnerable to attack, and there's no NPCs coming to back you up if you come under siege. There is a planned system, Station Warfare, that Rich Tyro broke down, where you get temporary shielding for bases outside of the UEE. But honestly, that's probably going to be an entire other video. So you're going to need to build defences, in the forms of turrets and base shields, if you want to give attackers a tough time taking what's yours. However, the good news is that you'll be saving money on taxes. No government, no security costs, equals no outlay. The land is yours for free, assuming that you can hold on to it versus other players. Still, a bit of tax avoidance might not strike you as enough of an incentive to base yourself in the more dangerous areas. But the other key element is going to be resource distribution. I'm really happy to see that CIG are heading down a well-reasoned risk-reward route. You'll find the lawless systems are far richer in resources, both in terms of quantity and quality. So your chances of finding high-value land are far higher if you're willing to brave the riskier zones. The distinction between the two areas is really perfect in my opinion. For those players who want to put form over function and build themselves a cool home, UEE space offers you all the protections you'll need, and your tax burden shouldn't be too cumbersome, particularly when you consider what you get out of paying for it. Meanwhile, players who want the hardcore PvP base building experience get rewarded for taking that additional risk, and putting in the extra effort of building defences and protecting their claim. It is worth noting that in Todd Pappy's presentation at the 2023 CitizenCon, they talked about 3 types of area rather than the 2 shown this time around. There was the high sec and the null sec, but there was also a low sec, so sort of in between area. And this would allow buildings to be attacked and PvP to take place, but due to the land claims and it still being within the UEE, the owner org would never be at risk of totally losing control of the territory. And while they didn't really talk about it, it seems that CIG have just decided to simplify things by just having shielding everywhere in UEE space and a free-for-all outside of it. And as with many things, I think in this case simplicity is beautiful. For my own org, Frontier Consolidated, I think we'll be looking at a core and satellite approach, straddling high sec and low sec. High sec UEE space will probably be our true home, where we build our main base. Fun social facilities for org members, including our racetrack for the Go Fast crew, and maybe more importantly, high-value manufacturing facilities and storage. We'll then look to build satellite outposts in the nullsec areas, specialised resource gathering bases for the industrialists, and forward operating bases for our combat and exploration crews to resupply at. These bases in nullsec will be disposable. In my experience, if a base can physically be attacked, then at some point it will be, and you will lose everything that you sunk into it. Even if you're good at combat, there's always somebody better. Even if you're a big org, there's always someone bigger. And just before anyone says, "Oh, I'll just build loads of turrets," let's get one thing straightened out. There is no such thing as a perfect base defense. The only way to guarantee a successful defense is to ensure that you always have a number of players online, and at the base to actively defend it versus whatever opposition you could encounter. And that's just unrealistic even for the largest orgs. In most high-level survival PvP, base architects don't even try to completely remove the possibility that someone will get in. They aim to make it as resource intensive as possible for a raider to get all the loot in the base. Compartmentalization, false doors, layered walls, hidden turret chambers, etc. So instead, the focus of satellite bases would be on extracting more value than you sink into them before someone else comes along and destroys it. There may be some value to investing in low value add manufacturing like refineries at these locations, as refining usually results in a smaller volume of refined goods, making shipping more efficient. But we would then look to convoy these mats back to the main HQ where they can be turned into finished goods. If all this stuff around base building and crafting has got you interested in joining an org, please do pop into our Discord via the link in the video description down below. There's no pressure to join up, but you can check us out and just see if we fit. Once you've decided on UEE or non-UEE territory, you'll want to properly assess the land that you're considering. Building vehicles will all have a surveying drone that affords you an augmented reality view of a certain area. This will inform you if an area is off limits, if it's a nature reserve, or potentially there's a security facility too close by. It'll also give you details of any resource deposits available. As we'll come on to, a number of structures are purposely designed to extract resource deposits from underground, so you may wish to search for a location that specifically has a mineral deposit that you want to exploit. You may also have completely different goals like agriculture, where you'll want to consider what plants you can grow in the local soil and under the native sun, or if you need to think about fully contained hydroponic structures. We'll need to wait and see on a lot of this stuff, but it'll be interesting to understand what different resources are going to be fully interactable with in the game world, and how much resource availability is going to play into deciding where to stake your claim. The surveying drone will also give you a good idea of the lay of the land. If you need a lot of flat space to build landing pads or factories, you'll get a good idea of what's going to be possible in a certain location. But once you've decided, it will be time to start building. Shortly we're going to look at the ships and vehicles that will help you, but the actual mechanics of building seem to be universal regardless of the scale at which you're constructing. And I've got to say, I quite often criticise CIG for unnecessarily reinventing the wheel when it comes to game mechanics. I'm looking primarily at U inventory system. But this is not one of those times, because I've not seen building mechanics done in this way before, and I actually think it's super smart. Entering your build control interface will give you effectively a bird's eye view of the area, using the surveying drone's perspective. This is more like a real-time strategy camera view that's perfect for planning your build, selecting structures and placing them in perfect alignment. The amount of times I have been building in other survival games down at ground level, and then had to go and get on a flying mount to go up and get a proper view of what I was doing is uncountable. In some games which didn't have the option of flight, I've had to go to some extremes, such as building a dedicated observation tower to get the same results. If you're in UEE space, then this building interface will allow you to make your land claim, and then you can go ahead and select buildings and start placing them. Once you do this, the construction drones will set about building it for you. And they'll automatically feed off raw materials that you deposit in the local area, and over time complete the structure. Everything in the demonstrations at SitCon was sped up to a huge degree, so please expect this to be a far greater time sink when it comes to the real game. Drones come in 4 sizes: small, medium, large and extra large, and can build structures of the corresponding size and lower. So a small drone can only build small buildings, but a large drone can build large, medium and small. They can also team up on tasks, so if you've got multiple drones they can go off and build separate buildings simultaneously, or they can focus together on one and increase the speed of the building. It's worth noting that larger drones will also build structures more quickly, so even if you've only got small structures to build, it could still be advantageous to use a medium drone to save time. Much like other types of craftable item, structures will have a quality influenced by the quality of the resources with which you make them, and the tier of their blueprint can be upgraded from tier 1 to tier 3 with research. Better quality structures will have the potential to gain greater resistance to wear and tear, reduced power and water requirements, and an improved hacking level. I assume this will prevent them from being broken into easily by cat burglars. In a similar way to crafted ships, you can upgrade structures in situ, so you won't have to tear down and rebuild your entire base just because you got a slightly better blueprint while you're out on your travels. The construction interface also provides access to resource management, where you can ensure that your buildings are supplied with water and power. There wasn't too much information on this, but the menu does also have sections for shields, so I assume you can see an overview of what's protected by any local base shielding you build here too. Resource Manager will also give you overviews to help balance your supply versus your requirements. Again, I've got to say hats off to the devs on this system as it currently looks. Many base building games require a master's degree to understand all this stuff, with complex menus or external tools like spreadsheets to calculate it on the fly. So having this all embedded within the game mechanics seems really promising. Finally, decorative AR mode can be used internally within structures to place smaller items like furnishings or crafting machines, allowing you to see a holographic view of items before placing them directly from local inventory. This will allow you to place items that would otherwise not fit into structures through entry points. You'll also have the option to maglock furnishings to the floor, meaning that only you and your friends can rearrange the feng shui of your pad. This feature won't be limited just to base building. In the future we'll be getting this for personal hangars and ships as well. This is going to be perfect for me, as every time I put my subscriber flare potted plant on display, it just mysteriously disappears whenever my org mates come over. But what exactly can you build? Well, we haven't got a definitive list, but we're definitely able to put together the archetypes based on what we've seen so far. To start with, we've got generic buildings, which seems to be a bit of a weird title, but I'm just using CIG's terminology here. This category includes things like habitation blocks and interconnecting corridors. Corridors themselves might not seem too exciting, but they'll probably be essential if you want to avoid an aerial suntan when moving between your different structures. Then, since all buildings have a power and water requirement, we've also got different structures which are designed to help them fulfill this. Power comes in multiple forms, each with positives and negatives. So the key example used was that of a fuel generator, which was quick and easy to use, but requires a constant source of fuel, so you'll need to keep that resupplied. But we've also seen concepts and heard talk of other ideas around power, such as geothermal or solar. And speaking as a real-life resident of Scotland, I can tell you I love solar's possibilities, but I question its practicality. Water pumps are also listed in the build menus, but we haven't seen them yet. They'd obviously be dependent on actually having access to a water source. And if you don't have one of those, then the chances are that water's an asset that you're going to have to ship in. We've also got a number of different extractor types, separated into solid, liquid and gas subcategories. There were some large solid state extractors shown in the sitcom presentation, and oh my, yes please. However, Declan was really keen to stress that structures like this wouldn't just mean free resources forever, with the buildings subject to wear and tear and needing regular maintenance to remain functional. Then we've also got crafting structures. So the most basic of these would be the refineries, which follow the same pattern as the extractors with options for solid, liquid and gas. While smaller fabrication units like item fabs will fit inside buildings, some like the ship fabrication hangars will be entire massive structures in themselves. Again, the exact dimensions of these haven't been stated, but I think it's fairly safe to assume that any ship that can currently land planetside will be able to be fabricated at ground base, which would mean that these will likely follow the small, medium, large and extra large pattern that we've got for hangars in game now. I do wonder, pure speculation warning, whether we'll get large fabrication structures other than fabrication hangars. It'd be cool to see really scaled up item fabricators, for example. Like if I want to make one assault rifle at a time, I might use the small item fab shown in the crafting section. But what if I have a small personal war on the go and I want to make them by the 1,000? Storage structures include freight elevators like the ones that we've got access to in our hangars and at ground locations in the game currently. Elevators can be placed around your base and used to access the same overall storage. They will have a range limit, but you can effectively daisy chain them to allow you to pull commodities from one side of your base to the other with minimal effort. And for storing your fleet, we've got hangars. Much like with the fabrication hangars, I'd expect these to follow the established sizes. We also saw landing pads dotted around the various bases, so it makes sense for these to fall under the same category for when you want a quick landing spot. While still in the early design phases, there were also some other archetypes that have been highlighted, including farming and ranching, which will be split between high and low tech. Low tech will involve planting seeds into the native soil, assuming that it can support your crop, while high tech will extend into complex hydroponic setups. Ranching facilities should help you maintain herds of creatures like quasi-grazers. I honestly can't wait to see someone like Wicked Wookie make Yellowstone in space. And finally, we've got defensive structures, which will include a variety of options for securing your claim in lawless areas. This includes local shields, perimeter walls and gates, and an array of automated turrets for targeting vehicles, missiles and personnel. I'm really happy to see that CIG seem to be taking what I'd term the Empire Strikes Back approach to base raiding. Shields are designed to withstand aerial bombardment, so simply nuking a base out of existence with a friendly A2 isn't going to be the option. So instead you'll need to take a combined arms approach, mounting a ground offensive to break into the base and disable the shield generators before you can bring in your aerial support. Of course, it wouldn't be a Star Citizen video if we didn't take at least some time to talk about ships, and like many other professions, base building is going to have a number of dedicated vehicles surrounding it. The construction gravcart is the smallest of the base building vehicles, and it's been designed with a key eye on portability. It can fit into some of the smallest ship interiors, with a Drake cutter being used as an example of ships that can carry it. And the gravcart has two small construction drones, meaning that it can only build small structures. But its compact size is going to make it perfect for constructing that cabin in the woods that a lot of folks are after. If you want something a little more chunky, we've got the Argo CSV-FM, or to give it its full catchy name, the Construction Support Vehicle Fabrication Module. Gotta love Argo. This version of the CSV has a drone launcher for two medium drones, allowing it to build medium and small structures. It also benefits from an internal hopper with 4 SCU of storage, allowing you to carry a limited supply of building mats with you. And while this might not seem significant, if you wanted to build in a hard to access area like one of the jungles or redwood biomes, it might prove to be a real advantage over the gravcart. The CSV-FM is about the same size as a tumbril cyclone, and it should fit comfortably into a wide array of vehicles, including things like the Cutty Black. For building large structures, we now have not one but two confirmed options. The RSI Galaxy was pitched to have a base building module, then that was U-turned on, then it was U-turned on again, and CIG reconfirmed that they would work to develop one. But we also have the newly concepted MISC Starlancer build. I've been playing around with the Starlancer Max Cargo variant, and I've got to say I really dig this thing. The build will trade the SCU capacity for construction tools. It has 4 large drones controlled from a dedicated drone control room, and it has an internal resource capacity of 32 SCU for feeding the drones with the construction mats. Then it has 96 SCU of cargo capacity beyond that, which you can feed into the internal hopper. In the sitcom video of the large base building, Declan controlled the process from a static construction hub building, a giant tower standing over the base itself. So chances are that when it comes to larger builds, you'll be using a ship to deploy this initial startup structure and maybe some landing pads and a fledgling storage network. Then you can continue with construction from the hub, bringing in more supplies using your cargo ships. And finally, to handle the largest of construction projects, we have the Consolidated Outland Pioneer. The Pioneer is essentially a flying factory, designed to manufacture not only extra large structures, but also everything you might need in a gigantic build. The ship has cargo capacity for up to 1000 SCU, and resource extractors built into the landing gears, enabling you to start mining out resources from your claim to feed your building efforts as soon as you touch down. The Pioneer's fabrication suite contains a bank of item fabricators, and the ship even has a small fabrication hangar with exit points via ramp or the top, allowing you to make vehicles up to the size of the Nomad and fly or drive them out. In the actual construction department, the Pioneer has 4 extra large drones capable of building the largest structures. And as we'll come on to in the second half of this deep dive, even player-owned space stations. So with part 2 sufficiently teased, let's maybe leave it there for this half. It's taken me a while to put this together because I wanted to be as thorough as I possibly could, and take the time to rewatch all of the presentations to make sure I'd got everything nailed down tight. That said, in a topic this big, it's always possible that I've missed a factoid or got something a wee bit wrong. Don't be afraid to let me know down in the comments. I'll pin a list of anything that needs to be re-clarified. While I'm under no illusion that this stuff is coming in the nearest future, I am incredibly happy and excited to see that CIG have a clear design plan when it comes to crafting and base building. I think these aspects are going to be absolutely key to driving the game's long-term economy, endgame, and just driving players to get out there and do stuff. I also particularly love how it encourages everyone to interact with each other, be that to trade with one another for high-tier crafted items, shop at one another's stores, work together in an org to build a base, or work together to blow someone else's base to Kingdom Come. If you enjoyed the video and would like to support the channel, honestly the best things you can do are to drop a like, hit subscribe and leave me a comment down below to let me know what you think about base building and crafting. What are your plans for when this enters the game, and where are you going to build your home? If you would like to go a step further and contribute to my burrito fund, I do also have a Patreon, but honestly just by watching you're already doing more than enough. So with all that said, I'd just like to say thank you very much for watching all the way to the end, and I look forward to seeing you next time.